In the early 60s, one automotive engine dominated American racetracks. It was so fast that competitors couldn't keep up with it, and its torque tore up the asphalt. And then, at the peak of its glory, its own creators, General Motors Corporation, suddenly decided to destroy it. Why? In this video, we will tell how the unassuming Pontiac brand transformed into a formidable racing beast, reveal the secrets of the legendary 421 Super Duty's engineering genius, show its absolute dominance on the tracks, and finally explain why a corporate ban killed this titanic project in its prime. Prepare to learn the tragic story of unbridled power, an unjust ban, and an eternal legend. Watch until the end, and you will understand why the Pontiac 421 Super Duty is still considered one of the greatest engines in the history of American motorsport, yet one that never fully unleashed its potential. In the late 1950s, when America was still recovering from post-war euphoria and cars were not just a means of transport, but also a status symbol, the Pontiac brand was, shall we say, quite venerable. Its reputation was firmly associated with reliable, but frankly boring, cars for those who had long since entered their 50s. Advertising brochures of that era were filled with images of respectable couples leisurely traveling on scenic country roads, and happy families returning from church. These were cars for the respectable, but certainly not for those who craved speed and drive. It was at this moment, deep within General Motors, that a daring idea matured to completely change Pontiac's DNA. This happened thanks to two charismatic and visionary executives, Simon "Bunky" Knudsen, who took the helm of the brand, and the brilliant young engineer John DeLorean. They looked at Pontiac not as a manufacturer of cars for grandmothers and grandfathers, but as a sleeping giant capable of awakening true passion and conquering streets and racetracks. Their ambition was grand, to transform the brand from a synonym for conservatism into a symbol of aggressive power and cutting-edge technology. Knudsen and DeLorean understood to attract a new, young, dynamic audience, more than just cosmetic changes were needed. A true transformation was needed, and motorsport became the key tool for this transformation. Drag racing was gaining momentum across the country, and it was there that true automotive stars were born. In the late 50s, while competitors were still chasing sales volumes in traditional segments, Pontiac began a bold move to get ahead. Their first step in this ambitious plan was the appearance in 1961 of engines that received an ominous and promising name, Super Duty. These were not just refined production units. They were specially modified 389 cubic inch monsters, honed exclusively for ruthless drag strip races. Forget about billboards with pastoral landscapes. Now posters demanded images of screeching tires and plumes of smoke. It's important to understand that these engines were not intended for mass sale. They could only be obtained by special order, and only by selected racing teams, the most promising and capable drivers, ready to wring every ounce of power from them. This decision was more than strategic. Pontiac wasn't just participating in races. It was building its reputation, proving its technical superiority, and most importantly, forging a completely new image. Now their cars were chosen not for leisurely picnic trips, but for conquering drag strips, for that very feeling when the engine compartment turns into a forge of speed, and the entire world around disappears in the roar of the engine and unrestrained acceleration. Teenagers and young adults, who just yesterday considered Pontiac their parents' choice, suddenly saw in it the car of their dreams. This audacious step, imbued with foresight and a willingness to take risks, became the foundation. It not only changed the brand's perception, but also paved the way for the emergence of a true legend. The very legend that was destined to revolutionize the world of motorsport, but whose story would turn out to be as powerful as it was tragic. It was on this foundation, on the wave of success of the first Super Duty, that the creation of Pontiac's most iconic and devastating creation began, an engine destined to become a symbol of unbridled American power. And so, deep within Pontiac's engineering laboratories, where the air was infused with the smell of machine oil and unbridled ambition, that very miracle was born. It was a time when, under the astute guidance of Simon Bunky Knudsen and John DeLorean, Pontiac was rapidly shedding its boring car for the elderly image, transforming into a true king of performance. The first steps were taken back in 1961 with the introduction of the modified 389 cubic inch Super Duty units, wild beasts created exclusively for drag racing and available only to select racing teams. But this was merely a prelude. In late 1961, early 1962, Pontiac engineers achieved a real breakthrough, creating an engine that was destined to explode the world of motorsport, the legendary 421 Super Duty. It's important to understand, this wasn't just an enlarged version of the standard road-going 421, no? This was a specialized, uncompromising racing unit, built from the ground up for one single purpose: to win. Imagine the scene. In the dim light of garage lamps, where the smell of gasoline and the anticipation of speed hung in the air, mechanics and racers bent over this masterpiece of engineering. Every one of its components screamed of its uniqueness and its design for extreme loads. The cylinder block, it was significantly reinforced to withstand monstrous peak pressures. But the true heart of this monster lay within a forged crankshaft, forged connecting rods, and pistons, parts capable of withstanding hellish loads and RPMs without deforming or breaking apart. This wasn't just metal, it was a symphony of strength and precision. The cylinder heads, that's a different story. Special high-performance castings, known by numbers number 538,177 or number 543,781, had redesigned ports ensuring unimpeded airflow and fuel delivery, guaranteeing maximum cylinder filling and efficient combustion. Every curve, every millimeter was precisely calibrated to achieve the engine's ideal breathing. And, of course, the heartbeat of it all, special racing camshafts. Their aggressive profile was far from road-going counterparts. They opened valves longer and wider, allowing the 421 SD to breathe deeply at dizzying RPMs. And how was it fed? It was a true bacchanal for speed enthusiasts to 4-barrel carburetors, be it Carter AFB or Rochester for GC, mounted on a special, lightweight, aluminum intake manifold. This system provided an avalanche-like delivery of fuel and air, transforming each engine stroke into a true explosion. This was not just an engine, it was a living organism, tuned for absolute domination. In 1962, the 421 Super Duty officially debuted, installed in specially prepared, lightweight Pontiac Catalina cars, nicknamed Swiss cheese for their frame cutouts and elegant Grand Prix models. The results were not long in coming. The 421 Super Duty rapidly gained a dominant position in the Super Stock and Stock classes at NHRA races. The names of Arnie Farmer Beswick, Jess Tyree, and Mickey Thompson became inextricably linked with this engine as they set records and achieved victories, demonstrating incredible power and, most importantly, monstrous torque. The claimed 405 horsepower was just an official figure. In racing configuration, this beast easily produced 450 to 500. And even more horses, providing phenomenal acceleration off the line that left rivals in the dust. It was the pinnacle of engineering ingenuity of its time, a machine that could transform any car into a rocket on wheels. The Pontiac 421 Super Duty, it was not just a collection of parts. It was a legend born at the peak of American automotive power, ready to shatter records and rewrite motorsport history. It was invincible, it was wild, and it seemed nothing could stop its triumphant march. 1962 arrived. And the world of motorsport held its breath, because on the starting grid appeared a true predator born for speed and victories. The 421 Super Duty was no longer a secret project for the chosen few or a unit quietly tested behind closed doors. Now it entered the big arena, officially, loudly, and ruthlessly. Its monstrous power needed to be housed in something no less revolutionary to truly unleash its potential. And Pontiac responded with lightweight Pontiac Catalinas, nicknamed Swiss cheese. Just imagine, these seemingly massive cars, standing on the drag strip, were in fact masterfully lightened. Pontiac engineers mercilessly cut into their frames, carving out huge, strategically placed holes, like giant holes in a block of cheese, to shed every superfluous gram. This was a visual statement of intent. Every ounce of weight was sacrificed for speed. Against the backdrop of these perforated frames, a contrast, the massive 421 Super Duty packed tightly under the hood, a symbol of unbridled, concentrated power, alongside the holy Catalinas. Less extreme but no less powerful stood the elegant Pontiac Grand Prix, also equipped with this new art. And this art, the 421 Super Duty, was not just an enlarged version of the regular 421, which also debuted in '62 as a road engine. No, the SD, it was a specialized racing unit, built from the ground up for one purpose: to dominate. A reinforced block, forged crankshaft, forged connecting rods and pistons, unique high-performance cylinder heads with special castings, for example. Number 538,177 or number 543,781 special racing camshafts. Every detail was honed for extreme loads. Fueling was provided by two 4-barrel Carter AFB or Rochester for GC carburetors mounted on a special aluminum intake manifold. Officially, 405 horsepower was claimed, but whispers in the pit lanes, confirmed by results, spoke of a real 450 or even all 500 horses ready to tear up the asphalt. Imagine this moment: the starting grid, the sun blinds the eyes. The smell of racing fuel hangs in the air. Next to competitors, who were also no slouches, stood these Swiss cheese Catalinas and powerful Grand Prix models. The drivers, among them the legendary Arnie Farmer Beswick, Jess Tyree, and Mickey Thompson. Focus, green light, and the ground shakes. Not just the sound of an engine, it was a roar that seemed to tear the very fabric of space. The cars didn't drive. They teleported from the starting line, leaving behind not only thick clouds of smoke from burning rubber, but also astonished, dropped jaws of spectators and helplessly lagging competitors. It was pure, unbridled impulse. It was the monstrous torque inherent to the 421 SD that provided phenomenal acceleration off the line, turning every race into a display of absolute superiority. They didn't just participate, they conquered. The Pontiac 421 Super Duty instantly established its dominant position in the super stock and stock classes at NHRA races. These were not just victories, these were records that were rewritten again and again with every run, every finish. No one could match this power. Every race became a confirmation. The 421 Super Duty was not just an engine, it was an era. An era that seemed destined to last forever, forever changing the face of American motorsport and establishing Pontiac as the undisputed king of the drag strip. And this king didn't just rule, he dominated. Starting in 1962, when the Pontiac 421 Super Duty officially debuted on America's drag strips, the world of auto racing changed forever. This wasn't just another powerful engine. It was the culminating moment in Pontiac's strategy, which under the leadership of Simon Bunky Knudsen and John DeLorean, was rapidly transforming the brand from a car for the elderly into a true manufacturer of high-performance monsters capable of challenging any speed, The 421 SD became the embodiment of this transformation, evolving from the early 389 cube-inch Super Duty units of 1961, which even then showed what a racing Pontiac was capable of. But the 421 was a completely different beast. It wasn't merely an enlarged version of the regular road-going 421, which appeared that same year. It was an absolutely specialized giant created exclusively for drag racing, with a reinforced block, a crankshaft forged to super-strength forged connecting rods and pistons, unique high-performance cylinder heads, such as the legendary castings number 538,177 or number 543,781. Each of which was an engineering masterpiece optimized for maximum flow. Add to this special racing camshafts carefully selected for high RPMs and optimal valve overlap, and a fuel system with to 4-barrel Carter AFB or Rochester for GC carburetors, mounted on a special high-flow aluminum intake manifold, and you have the recipe for absolute victory. These engines, installed in specially prepared, lightweight Pontiac Catalinas, nicknamed Swiss cheese due to strategic frame cutouts for weight reduction, or in Grand Prix models, didn't just participate in races. They won them, always, again and again. Imagine the atmosphere of a drag strip in the early 60s, the roar of an excited crowd, the smell of racing fuel and burnt rubber hanging in the air. At the start, not just a car, but a legend on wheels, a Pontiac Catalina, from beneath whose rear wheels a thin wisp of smoke already curled, like a harbinger of an imminent storm. A stopwatch in the judge's hand, his finger trembling in anticipation. Tension mounts, and then it's the green light. And at that moment, it's not just a start, but a true explosion. The sharp, deafening roar of the 421 Super Duty shatters the silence, and the car, it doesn't drive, it teleports. Smoke from beneath the tires transforms into a thick curtain, completely obscuring the asphalt behind, as the Pontiac, with incredible, almost surreal speed, flies into the distance. Competitors, who just a moment ago were alongside, are left far behind, in clouds of their own dust and disappointment. The crowd roars with delight, and no one among the thousands gathered doubts. This was the 421 Super Duty. This was the dominant Pontiac. This very scenario unfolded on NHRA Super Stock and Stock Class racetracks across America. Legendary names such as Arnie Farmer Beswick, with his famous farmer's fancy Pontiac, Jess Tyree, and Mickey Thompson became synonymous with invincibility. Their exploits in Pontiacs with the 421 SD are forever etched in the annals of drag racing. Beswick regularly left entire armies of competitors behind, demonstrating not only power, but also masterful control. Jess Tyree set one record after another, proving the incredible stability and reliability of this engine. Mickey Thompson, the one-man band of American Motorsport, saw the 421 Super Duty as the ideal tool for his ambitions, and the results were swift, cementing Pontiac's reputation as the invincible king of speed. The officially declared power output of the 421 Super Duty was 405 horsepower. But this was merely a figure for the record, an attempt to keep racing monsters within the rules of stock classes, where such figures seemed acceptable. In reality, racing configurations of this engine, stripped of any limiting factors, produced, by the most conservative estimates, from 450 to 500 and even more horsepower. However, even raw power was not the main trump card and reason for the 421 SD's phenomenal dominance. The key to its invincibility lay in its monstrous torque asterisk. This monstrous torque, available even from the lowest RPMs, allowed relatively heavy Pontiac cars to literally launch off the line, instantly breaking away with such staggering force that competitors were left behind, barely having released the clutch. This provided phenomenal, almost magical acceleration that few could replicate, giving Pontiac a decisive advantage in the first, critically important meters of the distance, from where no one could catch them. The 421 Super Duty became an absolute symbol. A symbol of undisputed supremacy, engineering audacity, and that unbridled passion for speed that defined the golden era of American drag racing. Its presence on the track guaranteed a spectacle of dominance that established Pontiac not just as a participant, but as the undisputed absolute king of speed whose name instilled awe in rivals and true delight in fans. This was the peak, the apogee, a moment when the 421 SD seemed destined to reign forever, unchallenged and absolute, forever changing the perception of what a racing car should be. And then, when triumph seemed unshakable, when the Pontiac 421 Super Duty reigned supreme on drag strips, its name instilled awe in rivals and true delight in fans. This was the peak, the apogee, a moment when the 421 SD seemed destined to reign forever, unchallenged and absolute, forever changing the perception of what a racing car should be. No one could have imagined that this dazzling ascent would be so abruptly, so ruthlessly cut short. Suddenly, like a bolt from the blue, a blow struck that no one could have foreseen. Not cunning competitors, not the whims of changeable weather, and not even fatal technical failures, but a decision made in the cold, austere boardrooms of the corporate giant General Motors. Imagine this glaring dichotomy. On one side, the roar of thousands of horsepower, the echo of jubilant crowds, the screech of tires heated to their limit, and the intoxicating smell of racing fuel embodying the very essence of life and freedom on the track. And on the other, a quiet, gloomy room where tense silence reigned, broken only by the rustling of papers and the voices of board members making a cold, calculated decision that would forever change not only the fate of Pontiac, but also all of American motorsport. In January 1963, when the Pontiac 421 Super Duty was at the very peak of its dominant glory, General Motors issued a fateful corporate directive. This document, devoid of any emotional coloring, became a death sentence for the factory racing programs of all its divisions. Pontiac, Chevrolet, Oldsmobile, Buick, each was ordered to immediately cease direct participation and any official support for motorsport. The motives behind this decision were complex, intertwined, and, as often happens in the world of large corporations, far removed from the romance of the racetrack. Firstly, and this was a significant factor, GM sought a more responsible corporate image. Amid growing attention to road safety issues, increasing public pressure, and the first signs of the formation of a vehicle safety movement, the Detroit giant did not wish to be associated with reckless high-speed racing. In the eyes of ordinary citizens, racing could appear irresponsible, and GM did not want to be at the center of this storm of public opinion. Secondly, there were extremely serious antitrust concerns. General Motors was a colossus, the world's largest automotive company, dominating the market with incredible scope. Its active, aggressive participation in motorsport, especially as successful as Pontiac's, could be interpreted by federal regulators as unfair competition, an attempt to suppress rivals, attracting unnecessary and dangerous attention from antitrust authorities. The company had already faced similar lawsuits in the past and did not wish to provide new pretexts for investigations that could lead to forced breakup or other destructive sanctions. And finally, there was a purely economic, pragmatic logic. Resources spent on expensive and highly specialized racing programs, such as the development and production of unique racing engines, the construction of lightweight Swiss cheese-type bodies for the Catalina, and the maintenance of an entire army of racers and mechanics could be far more effectively redirected towards the development and production of mass-market road cars. After all, it was these, not victories on the drag strips, that brought in the lion's share of profits. For the 421 Super Duty, this meant an immediate and irrevocable halt. The production of these unique engines created not just as enlarged versions of the road-going for 21s, but as the pinnacle of engineering ingenuity. Specialized racing units with reinforced blocks, specially designed forged crankshafts, connecting rods, and pistons. With those very legendary high-performance cylinder heads, number 538,177 or number 5 for 3781. Unique racing camshafts and a complex fuel system with to 4-barrel Carter AFB or Rochester for GC carburetors on a special aluminum intake manifold, all of this was mercilessly halted. Supplies of specialized racing parts, which allowed masters like Arnie Farmer Beswick, Jess Tyree, Mickey Thompson, and others to squeeze a phenomenal 450 to 500 plus real horsepower out of them instead of the official 405, were cut off in an instant. Factory support for teams, which was vitally important for maintaining such a level of dominance and continuous development, was completely canceled. Cars, such as the radically lightened Catalina Swiss Cheese and Grand Prix, suddenly lost their foundation and purpose. Imagine the shock and unimaginable disappointment that gripped the Pontiac racing community at the very peak of its glory, when the 421 SD was absolutely invincible in the super stock and stock classes at NHRA races, when its monstrous torque guaranteed phenomenal acceleration off the line, leaving competitors far behind. It was simply unplugged. This decision was not just a turning point. It was an act of violence against unparalleled potential. And although the engines already produced thanks to their exceptional reliability and performance continued to successfully participate in races after 1963, but without official support, the era of factory total dominance of the 421 Super Duty came to an end. Pontiac was forced to shift its focus. Instead of creating uncompromising racing monsters, they focused on developing high-performance road versions of their engines, such as the 389 421st TO. It was this course forced and painful that ultimately led to the appearance of the legendary Pontiac GTO in 1964, a new symbol of power, but for the streets, not for professional tracks, becoming the progenitor of an entire genre of muscle cars. The Pontiac 421 Super Duty remained an unforgettable legend, a symbol of unbridled power and engineering excellence, which was deprived of the opportunity to fully unleash its potential due to cold corporate decisions. It was an engine that was killed at the peak of its glory, not due to weakness or obsolescence, but due to a strategic calculation made far from the roaring racetracks. Its phenomenal rarity and tragic yet incredibly rich history make it one of the most sought-after and valuable treasures among collectors and true enthusiasts, constantly reminding us of the price sometimes paid for corporate strategies, even if they clip the wings of true kings of speed. And this cutoff came suddenly, like a bolt from the blue. The blow was not just noticeable, it was devastating for everyone who believed in Pontiac's engineering prowess and racing spirit. In January 1963, General Motors issued a directive that forever changed the landscape of American motorsport. This wasn't just a recommendation or a budget cut, it was an outright ban. All divisions of the concern, Pontiac, Chevrolet, Oldsmobile, Buick, were ordered to immediately cease any direct participation and factory support for racing programs. Reasons? They were multifaceted and, from the corporation's perspective, entirely reasonable. GM aimed for a new, more responsible corporate image amidst growing public pressure on road safety issues. Antitrust concerns also played a role, as the dominance of one concern in motorsport could attract undue attention from regulators. And, of course, there was a desire to reorient all resources towards mass production, towards producing cars for the broad consumer rather than for a narrow circle of racing enthusiasts. The consequences were immediate and painful. Production of the Pontiac 421 Super Duty, this phenomenal racing unit, was immediately halted. Overnight, assembly lines that had been buzzing with activity just yesterday ground to a halt. Supplies of specialized racing parts, reinforced blocks, forged crankshafts, pistons, those very unique high-performance cylinder heads with castings number 538,177 or number 543,781. Special racing camshafts and intake manifolds for two 4-barrel carburetors ceased without warning. Factory support for racing teams, which had just concluded a triumphant 1962, was completely canceled. Imagine this scene: empty factory workshops, where just yesterday machines hummed and legendary engines destined for victories were assembled. Now a deafening silence reigned there, broken only by echoes. Mechanics, with bitter smiles, almost in mourning, disassembled incomplete units. Their hands, which only recently had honed every mechanism to perfection, now dismantled a dream. Racers like Arnie Farmer Beswick, Jess Tyree, and Mickey Thompson looked wistfully at their lightweight Catalina Swiss cheese or Grand Prix models. Just yesterday, these cars were symbols of invincibility, equipped with engines that officially delivered 405 horsepower, but in reality squeezed out 450 to 500 plus horses and produced monstrous torque. And now they became unsupported, deprived of internal support, abandoned to their fate. This verdict befell the 421 Super Duty at the very peak of its glory and dominance in drag racing. In 1962, it reigned on NHRA tracks in the super stock and stock classes, setting records and making competitors eat dust. It was a king whose ascent had just begun and whose potential seemed limitless. But it was at this very moment, when the engine was demonstrating its absolute superiority, that a corporate decision effectively killed it. The possibility of further development, of the evolution of this phenomenal engine, was ruthlessly cut off. It was ready for even greater achievements, but never fully unleashed its potential, confined within the limits of what had already been produced. The fate of the Pontiac 421 Super Duty became a bitter lesson on how fragile engineering genius can be in the face of corporate policy. It became a symbol not only of unbridled power and engineering superiority, but also of the sudden silence that follows the abrupt end of the loudest song of victory. However, the song, though cut short, left behind a powerful echo that continued to resound on America's drag strips for many years to come. Those very 421 Super Duty engines that had already rolled off the assembly line and were installed in Swiss cheese Catalinas and racing Grand Prix models did not vanish overnight. They were built not just to the limit, but with a colossal margin of strength, reinforced blocks, forged crankshafts, connecting rods and pistons, unique high-performance cylinder heads. This was true racing engineering, and it could not be broken by a mere directive. Teams that managed to acquire these units perfectly understood what a titan they held in their hands. Arnie Farmer Beswick, Jess Tyree, Mickey Thompson, and many others did not abandon their formidable machines. They continued to line up at the starting line, and despite the complete lack of factory support, funding, and supplies of specialized parts, the 421 Super Duty continued to dominate. Its monstrous torque, which ensured phenomenal starts, and its extreme power, which, by estimates, easily surpassed 450 to 500 horsepower, even with an official 405 horsepower, still crushed opponents. This was proof that Pontiac had created not just a powerful engine, but an indestructible racing beast, capable of winning even without corporate patronage. At the same time, while the remaining Super Duty engines continued their semi-underground but glorious racing career, Pontiac itself did not sit idle by. Under the leadership of Simon Bunky Knudsen and John DeLorean, the brand had already laid the foundation for a new image, that of a high-performance, youth-oriented manufacturer moving away from the car for the elderly image. Now that factory racing was banned, all this energy and drive for power were redirected from drag strips to ordinary roads. Pontiac engineers focused on creating high-performance road engines, such as the 389 high output and 421 high output. And it was this shift in strategy, this unwillingness to give up muscle, that led to something truly revolutionary. Just 1 year later, in 1964, the world saw the Pontiac GTO***, a car that officially laid the cornerstone for an entire era of muscle cars, forever changing the American automotive industry. Thus, the Pontiac 421 Super Duty, paradoxically, became an even greater legend precisely because its career was so abruptly cut short. It remained a symbol not only of unbridled power and engineering excellence, but also of that unrevealed, restrained force, a potential that could never fully unfold due to corporate decisions. It became a kind of Prometheus of American motorsport, from whom the fire was taken at the peak of its greatness. Today, the 421 Super Duty is not just an engine. It's an artifact, a testament to that wild, free era when manufacturers competed not only in sales, but also in pure, unadulterated power. Its rarity, for only a few hundred such units were produced, combined with its dramatic history and dominance on the track, makes it one of the most sought-after and valuable items among collectors and muscle car enthusiasts. Imagine a modern auction hall. Soft spotlight illuminates the perfect surface of meticulously polished aluminum. At the center of attention, an engine. Not just metal, but a sculpture of power, a work of art. It's the Pontiac 421 Super Duty. Its polished heads, dual carburetors, imposing size, all of it screams of speed, of the engine's roar, of the smell of racing fuel. Spectators stand in reverent silence, their gazes filled with admiration. Here, in the quiet and shine, it looks like a monument. A monument to unbridled power, a bygone era, and potential never fully realized. It is a living reminder that even the mightiest titans can be stopped, but their legacy lives on, only growing brighter with time. The Pontiac 421 Super Duty, an eternal legend of American motorsport. The saga of the Pontiac 421 Super Duty is more than a chronicle of unbridled power and asphalt-tearing torque. It is a profound narrative about the fragile dance between audacious human ingenuity, bold ambition, and the authoritative, often invisible hand of corporate strategy. This titan of speed, born to dominate, was stopped not by defeat, but by a strategic decree, silenced at the very peak of its roaring symphony. An eternal question arises: is the purest, most audacious embodiment of genius destined to clash with the iron will of institutional control? And can true legendary power ever be truly extinguished, or does it merely transform, rewriting history from the quiet echo of its sudden end? We invite you to share your thoughts on this epic story in the comments below. If this deep dive into automotive history resonated with you, please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new thrilling stories, and don't forget to like this video. Your support inspires us to seek out these forgotten legends.